Hello guys, in this video we are going to learn about HTML elements and their attributes, and at the end of this video we are going to add a Goto section functionality to our barbershop project. The Goto section is a navigation system that informs the user about the available sections on a page and allows them to jump from one section to another on a web page. So let's get into it. In the last video, we make use of some HTML tags to come up with this page, and I also mentioned that we have different tags for different purposes. Like we have tags for displaying text, the tag for displaying images. We also have tags for displaying a list. We also have tag for displaying table, and there's a tag for displaying audio in your website, and there is also a tag for video, and there are tags for making a form like this and a button. So now we are going to dive into taking a more deep look into what each of these tags are and their attributes. So the first thing we are going to do is to create a playground file here. In your VS Code, just click on this icon. So it says new file. So this is for creating a new file. This is for creating a new folder. So I'll just create a new file here, and then I'm going to name it playground.html. So in the last video, I also explained that .html is the file extension for any HTML file that you want to create. So over here now, I will just go ahead and bring out the HTML minimum code. And in the last video, I also mentioned that we can make use of the shortcut key Shift plus exclamation, and then when you click it, you are going to have this. So the HTML tags that we have here are the minimum HTML code that are required. So if I click on save, and I already have my server on port 5500 on here. So what I can do if I want to open this page on the browser as well is I can either right click here and choose this option, open with live server, and then it's going to open like this. So if I write playground here, you can see I have playground here as well. So another way is you can just come here, copy this URL over here, and then you can do slash playground .html, and then you can see what we have here too. So that's basically how you can have multiple files open on your live server. So, and the reason we are not having slash index.html here is because index.html is the root, is the starting point of server. So it is important that you name your file index.html like you have an index.html file, because when you visit google.com, you are going to see their landing page, and in their URL you will see google.com and not index.html. So that's basically it. So moving on, I'll just close this, and then I'll close this as well. So now let's pick these tags one after the other. So the first one is I'm going to have text tags here. So these are tags that are being used to render text like we've seen in the previous video. So for instance, we have the H1 to H6. So I can make a copy of this and change this to 6. So we have H1 to H6. So I can do heading 1, and then I can do heading 2. So now what we now want to check is the attributes that tags have. So attributes are basically ways in which we can provide more information to a particular tag. So these attributes could be like giving a particular tag a nickname. Say for instance, we could have multiple H1 tag on our web page like this. So how do we differentiate this H1 tag from this H1 tag, from this H1 tag, from this H1 tag? For instance, now if we have two tags, which is H1 and H6, we can differentiate them based on their tag name. So the tag name of this is different from this. So it is easier for us to differentiate between an H1 tag and an H6 tag. But in an instance where we have multiple h1 tag like this, how do we differentiate between these h1 tags? So even if their content is different, we still need a way to differentiate between the h1 tag that has this particular content and another h1 tag that has a particular content. So the way we can differentiate them is by giving them an attribute. So this attribute can be in two places. We can use an ID. So an ID is just like a unique name. Let's say, for instance, in a family, we can share the same surname. For instance, Ayodele, you can have the same surname with your siblings, but you cannot have the same first name and middle name with your sibling. So it's not possible for you to have the same full name with your sibling. So either of you must have a unique name that people can use to differentiate you. Even if you guys are twins, you guys must have a unique name. So a unique name that you have is what people are going to use to differentiate you guys in public. So the same way, we have the ID identifier. So the ID must be unique, which means like if I'm giving this an adding one ID, so this is the nickname for this tag. I can now come here and do adding two here, but I should not do heading 1 year. Yeah, I should not do heading 1 year. So it is a unique identifier. You can give them the same name. You can give multiple tags the same ID, but it is not actually how it's supposed to be, because even if you are a twins, you should not have the same full name. So they must have an identifier that can be used to differentiate you guys. So this is going to be an heading 2. So this way we know that this is an h1 heading 1, and then we have an heading 2. So that's basically it. So another attribute that we can use to give a nickname to a tag is the class attribute. The class attribute allows us to give elements the same nickname. So for instance, now if they are a twin, we can call them twins. So once we say Tai, or when we say Kende, that's what we call them in Nigeria. So I can call Tai twin and I can call Kende twin. So both of them are basically twin. So both of them are sharing this name, which is okay. But if we actually want to identify them uniquely, then we have to look for their ID. But both of them can share the same common name, which is named as twins. So an ID is a unique name, while a class name can also be unique, but it can be shared among other tags. But the ID must be unique. So the class can come like this. Class, we can call this as heading now, and we can also come here and say class edit. I've been talking about differentiating tags from one another using the ID or class. So in what case are we going to be needing ID and class? So the use case is when we are working with HTML and CSS, or we are working with HTML and JavaScript. So by the time we are integrating JavaScript into our project, or we are making use of CSS, we need the way to actually identify each of these tags from one another. So that's when we are going to be making use of an ID, or we are going to be making use of class. So by the time we get to CSS, you already know that the attributes of a tag can be used to reference them, which means like call them in CSS to style them. So we want to be able to differentiate an h1 tag from other h1 tags. So that's why we need an identifier or a class name. So it is also good to note that we can add the ID and the class attributes to any HTML tag, such like the image tag. We can have an ID. Let's say we are going to give this a profile image ID, or we can do a profile image class name like this. So this is actually how you can add ID or class to any HTML tag. We can give any tag in HTML these two attributes. We can also come here and do tag of body, and then a class of body as well. This is fine. You can do this with any tag. I don't see any reason you want to do this with the head. So there's no use case for adding into maybe the meta, the title tag, or things like that. But anything in the body, including the body itself. You can give it an ID and then you can access it. So if you want to access the title as well, you can give the title an ID as well. Let's say title. If you want to access it in JavaScript or any other places, any HTML tag, you can actually give it an ID or class. But for now, there's no reason you want to do this in the head. We're only going to be focusing on the body. So that's basically it for the ID and class. So the next thing we are going to be looking into is the auth attribute. So the auth attribute is actually specific to the image tag. So we have some attributes that are only specific to a particular tag, and we have attributes like ID or class that is generally available to use on any HTML tag. So let me delete this. The purpose of the auth tag is basically to display an alternative text on the browser when an image is broken. So for instance, now we did not provide a source attribute here. The source attribute is used to specify the URL that the image should be gotten from. For instance, now we have an image here. So the source is the path, the location of the image that we want to display. So we are not providing it here. So we could say this is a profile image. So when the image is broken, we want to display it here as the profile image. So this is the profile image. So let me zoom this in. So whenever an image is broken and you want to provide context to the user about the image that is broken, so you want to give them an idea that this is the kind of image that is actually broken here. So we are telling the user that your profile image is supposed to be displaying here, but it is actually broken. And another use case for the alternative attributes is for people who are using the screen reader. So screen readers are devices being used by people with visual impairment. So these screen readers help them to read the alternative text to the image that they cannot see. So if you do not provide an alternative text here and the screen reader gets to the image, the screen reader will just skip the image that is there. So this makes it difficult for people using screen readers to understand or know about the image that is actually in that particular section. So you as a web developer, you must be able to know that adding an alternative text is going to help people who are making use of the screen reader, and this is going to make your website accessible by people using this device as well. So over here now you can say this is profile picture, and then when the screen reader is going through the web page, then it reads each heading 1, heading 2, and when it gets there, it's going to say profile picture or cat picture or whatever alternative that you've already put in here. So that's one of the importance of having the alternative. So another attribute that we are going to be discussing on is the source attribute. So the source attributes, like I mentioned earlier and in the previous video, is an attribute that allows us to specify the location of the image that we want to add in the image tag. So the source, which is written like this, can help us to provide the location or path to the image. So let's say, for instance, we can do slash Babin. So VS Code is going to give us all these options, and all these images are already here, which is already provided in the last video. So I can do slash and then click on babin.jpg. So you can see now that we don't have the alternative text being displayed here. So when the source attribute is not provided, or the path is wrong, or you did not provide the value to the source attribute, that is the only time we are going to see the alternative text here on the browser. So but if the source attribute is being provided with the correct path name, then we are going to see the image and we are not going to visually see the alternative text as we are seeing on the browser right now. So the source attribute allows us to specify the location of the image that we actually want to add to our image. And adding the path here now, we have two different type of URLs or parts in HTML or computer generally. So we have the absolute part and then we have the relative part. So the absolute part is when we are actually writing the full location of where the image is. So let's say for instance now, let's say the image is located at, let's say, https then we do github.com slash username dot png. So and then I hit save. We have the image display like this. So this absolute means that we are actually specifying where the image part, where the image is coming from, down to the domain. So that's basically what absolute part means. When our website is hosted now, we don't really have to care about if this is going to change, if this URL is going to change. But if we are going to be making use of the relative part, so the relative part is actually using images that is in the code base. So like this one now, the image that we have here and this logo now, they are inside of the code base. But the image from here is coming from a URL, it's coming from another source, which is like constant. But if we want to always make reference to this, even if the domain that we are hosting it changes, we will just make use of the relative. So an example of a relative is going to be when we do slash logo, or when we do the slash Babin. So this is a relative part. You can see we are specifying just the name of the image, but for the absolutes we have to specify the source where it is actually coming from. So you don't really have to be worried about this for now. Just ensure that you have the image in your code base and then make reference to it. You know, as time goes on, you will get to understand the reason you have to make use of absolute or when you have to make use of relative. But keep in mind, absolute or relative, there's no one that is actually better than the other. It just depends on your own use case, because each project are not the same. So project requirements might require you to make use of absolute or relative. It's just good for you to know that we have two types of parts in HTML or computer generally. We have the absolute or we have the relative part. So moving on now, we are going to be looking into another attribute, which is the width attribute. So the width attribute goes together with the height attribute. So and this is mostly unique to the image as well. We also use this for video tags or iframes or any other tags depending, but majorly you'll be making use of it with image. So the width allows us to specify the height of an image. So I can do 100 here. You can see that the image becomes smaller now, so the image is now having a width of 100. And if you are specifying the width of an image, the height is going to complement it. The browser is going to complement the height in respect to the width that you've already specified. And then if you come here and do an height of 100, you can see now that this is the actual 100 height. So we can use this attribute to specify the width and height of an image. So I can increase this to like 400, you can see, and I can increase this to 400 as well. You can see what we have here. So the width and the height attributes are used to specify the dimension of an image. So we can also use this height and width with any data tags that support it. So but majorly you'll be making use of it with image tag, maybe an iframe tag or video tag. Yeah, so that's basically what we are going to be using the width and height attribute for. So the width is used to specify the width of an image, and then we have the height, which is used to specify the height of an image. So another attribute that we are going to be looking at is the href attribute. So the href attribute is actually unique to the anchor tag or the a tag. So the a tag is used to create link in our website, and we can write this as a, and then have our href attribute like this, and then we are going to close it. So we can have this as click me, So we have click me here. So let me just reduce this to 200, 200, so that we can see the link here. So we have click me here. So you can see the use case of using the width and height attributes. So I quickly reduce this so that I can see other element as well. The href attribute now can be used to specify where we want this link to direct to whenever we click on it. So for instance, now let's say if we remove this href attribute, you can see that there is no underline in this click me, and then the color is black like other heading tag that we have here. So the href attribute, if it is present in the anchor tag, is going to apply the underline and then a color to it. So this color and underline makes the browser differentiate between a regular text and then the link text. So you might be wondering, what if we apply the href to this tag, like the regular text tag? So if I come here now, let's say I change this to a p tag. So you can see now that nothing actually happens. It remains the same even though it has an href tag. So if I change this back to a tag, which is anchor tag, you can see now that we have it as underlined, and then we have it with a color. So the href tag is only unique to the anchor tag, and it should only be used with the anchor tag. So this href now, we can use it to specify links. We can also use the absolute or the relative part here. So the relative means like it is where you want to redirect to is within the code base, or it is within that particular web page. And that is the concept that we are going to be using to implement the go-to section functionalities on our barbershop. So this href now, we can say it should redirect to, let's say, https google.com. So when we click on this, it's going to redirect us to Google. So if I click on this now, it's going to redirect us to Google. So you can see now we are being redirected to google.com. So I'll just go back. I have a poor network this night. So now that we know that we can use href attributes to link to another page, and we can also make use of attributes. Let's say we want to link to the barber shop, which is index.html. You can see, so we can do something like this. So when I click on click me, you can see we are now on the index page. So this index page is the barber shop, this is the landing page, and then we can now go back. If I click back now, you can see we are on the playground page. If I click here, it's going to take us there. We can also add a link that is going to take us back to this page. So that's basically how to link two pages together. So if you want to link move from one page to another, you can create your href and then put the path to it over here. So once you click, it takes you here, and over here you can have another link that is going to take you back to the playground. So that's basically the importance of having an href. Now, the next attribute we are going to be talking about is still on the anchor tag, and this attribute is known as the target attribute. So this target attribute allows us to specify how we want the link to be opened. Do we want the link to be open on another window, or we want the link to be open on another tab, or we want the link to open on the same tab? So by default, whenever you click on a link, it's going to open on the same tab, and you can also specify if you want the link to open on a new tab. So for instance, if you want this link to open on a new tab, say for instance, you don't want the user to leave your website, but you want to redirect them to another website or to another page, why you want to keep that page that they are currently on open. So you can make use of a value of underscore blank. So this underscore blank is used to specify or instruct the browser that whenever this link is being opened or being clicked, we want it to be opened on a new tab. So for instance, now if I click on this link now, you can see that it's actually opened on a new tab. So you can see now we have a new tab. So if I click again, it's going to open on a new tab. So that's basically the importance of having the target. So we also have other attributes like parent. So depending on what you want to achieve, so parent is like it should open in the current tab. So it just depends on what you want to achieve, your use case. But the one I feel you will always be making use of is the blank. So the blank is just used to link a page, and that link should open on a new tab. So that's basically using the target. And then another thing you should have in mind is whenever you are using the blank attribute, you must always specify the relationship between the current page and the page or website that you are redirecting the user to. And this is important to prevent some hackers from performing some actions when you redirect from your own website to their own website. So you can make use of no referral. So this no referral can be used to specify that we are not actually referring from this page. Like this is not like a referral, so you should just open the link and then there's no connection between them in terms of like referral. We'll be like keeping the statistics or analytics from this page, and then which means like that page we don't know where the user is being redirected from. And then we also have no opener. So the no opener value is used to actually prevent attackers to have information from where you are opening it from. I know this is above the scope of this class, but I just want you to have an idea, like whenever you are using the underscore blank, ensure you have these two values. So even if they don't make sense to you, I don't expect you to fully understand these two values here. It can be confusing at the moment, but just ensure to use them, and by the time you keep using them and by the time it's clicked, you will not regret like being using them unknowingly before. So this is just to prevent attackers from having informations or doing something we call tab nabbing, to get informations about the users from another source. Some other attributes that we can clearly see is the lang attribute. We also have the chassis attribute like this. We also have the name attribute. We have the content attribute. So these are just basically things that you are going to be seeing regularly on HTML code base. So we are going to be seeing an attribute with their value. So whenever you see an attribute like an ID, it will have a value. You see an alternative attribute, you are going to see the value, the source, you will see the value, the width, you will see the value, href, you are going to see the value as well. So anytime you see a attribute being given to an HTML tag, definitely it will come with a value. So that's basically that. So another attribute we are going to quickly look at is the border attribute. So the border attribute is actually unique to the table. So we make use of table here in the barbershop, and we use the border to specify the border size that we want. So for instance, now let's say we have let's create a table. So we have a table, and then we have the table head, and then let's say we have the table row. So let's say we also have the table head here. So let's say name. So over here now you can see that we don't actually have any border around this. So this is not actually like the visual of a table. So we can come here to the table and then do border. So this attribute can now be used to pass in the border. So you can see now that we have let me zoom this in. So you can see now that we have a border here. So we have a border here. So if I increase this to 10, we have a very thick one. So this is basically an attribute that is being used to specify the width or size, or how big we want the border to be. So that's basically another attribute. So we have the border. So the essence of talking about all these attributes is just to showcase that we have some attributes that can be used on any HTML tag, but we have some attributes that are just unique to a particular tag. Because if we move this border now and we paste it here in the h tag, you can see that there's no effect. We don't have any effect here. And we've also demonstrated that when we move this href to a regular text, is not going to apply an order line or apply the color to it. So that's just to showcase that we have attributes that are just unique to a particular tag. So another attribute we are going to be looking at is the type attribute. So firstly, let's group this. So we have this for image tag, and then we have this is also under text, and yeah, so just to group them properly, and this is going to be table. So yeah, so another one is for forms. So we have forms, and this form now we are going to have an input tag. So this input tag now is going to have a type. So let me come here so you can see this is the input. We have the input here. Let me make this a little bit smaller. So we have the input here. So this input allows us to collect information from user. Let's say we want to have their username, or we want to have their phone number. We can enter it. We want something like address. That's what input is being used for. So this is an output, and this is used to take input. So now there are different kind of input that we can take, and there are different methods in which we can take input from user. Maybe we don't want them to actually type the input. Maybe we just want them to select, or we just want them to pick a file to upload a file. So we can actually do that with this input tag. So this input tag now is used to collect input. Yeah, so we now want to specify the type or the method in which we want to collect the input from them. So we can use this type to specify, let's say for instance, it could be text. So this text is the default one in which we can write text, of course, and then we also have another one. So I'll just make a copy of this and then paste it here, and then change this to radio. So this radio now is going to be like this, which we can just select. So we can use this radio. So the same input can be used to collect input as text or as radio for the user to select, or we can also make another copy of this and paste it here. And one thing I want you to know is, like in VS Code, if you want to know the value that you can pass to an attribute, just press the control key with the space bar, and then you can see all the value that you can pass to an attribute. So for an input, we can pass in an attribute of button, and then if you make another copy, so I'll just copy and paste this couple of times. So let me comment this out. So this is the button, this is text, this is radio, this is button. So for this button now, it should have a value of, let's say, button. So you can see now that this is a button. So this is another way in which you can take input. Maybe you just want the user to press the button to select an option. And then we have the checkbox. So the checkbox and the radio looks kind of similar, like you just have to click them and then they are going to be filled. So we are going to be making use of all of this in full details later in the future, but just keep it in mind that we have this kind of input. So another type is, I'll just move it out. So we also have the color. So this color type allows us to take color input from the user. Maybe we want them to specify the background color or the theme color for their projects or for their website. So once we set the type to color, then they can select any color that they want, like this. So another attribute that we have is, let's just do this. We have the date. So we have the date type to collect an imp of date from the user. Maybe you want them to set their date of birth, or you want them to set a reminder, or to set a calendar. So we can make use of the date type. You can go for maybe to Thursday on 4th, and then you can type the date from here. So that's another way of taking input. So another attribute that we have is the date time, but this date time has been deprecated, is not actually working anymore. So it's just going to be set as invalid, and then you can see we only have an input box which is going to be set as the text type. So this now brings us to like what happens if you set the type to an incorrect type, or you just write gibberish here like I just did. So once you check the output here, you can see like it reverts back to the text type like this. So whenever you enter an invalid type, it's just going to revert back to the text type. So now let's make use of the next one. So the next one we have here is datetime looker. So the datetime looker is quite different from the date type, because this allows us to also set to select the date, the time, and also whether it is PM or it is AM. So it also allows us to select that. So and once we are done, you can see it's quite different from what we have here. This only allows us to set the date, but this allows us to set the date and the time as well. So it will just work with the local time of the user. So another attribute that we have is the email attribute. So if you check here now, we see the email attribute. So the email attribute is different from the text attribute, even though they have the same visual output like this. The only difference between them is like the email type only expects an email address format. So if the user is not entering a correct email format and they try to submit the button, the form or the input is actually going to throw an error. So let's say for instance now we wrap all of these tags in a form tag like this, and then I move this to the end like this. So and then I have another attribute. Let's say we have input type submit. So to submit the form, and then we are going to set the value to be submit like this. So this is quite different from the button, because the button is just like a button, but the type submit is also a button, but the purpose of the type submit is to submit a form. So when you have a form tag, you know, or you have a form generally, you know, at the end of filling the form, you want to submit it. So this type submit is actually going to try and submit the form, while the button is just a button. So you have to find another means to make the button submit the form when the user is ready. But the behavior of the submit value for the type attribute is to try and submit the form. So now with this now, if I write Unclebigbay, you know, generally to write an email, you must have an @ you must have the domain, maybe yahoo.com or gmail.com. So this is the correct one. So let's say I did not put the @ and then I try to submit. So I click on the submit. Now you can see it's telling me please include an @ in the email address. Unclebigbay is missing an @ so this understands that the input that the user must enter must pass the validation for an email address format. So this is not the correct format for an email address, and that is why it is throwing this error. So let's do the same thing with button. So if I click the button, you can see nothing is actually happening, even if we bring it to beside it. So if I click on button, you can see submit is reloading, button is not doing what. So even if I write Unclebigbay and then I click button, nothing is going to happen. But when I click submit, you can see it's throwing the error. So what if I add @ so if I add @ here and click on submit, you can see please enter a path following @ Unclebigbay @ is incomplete. So if I click on button, it's not going to trigger the error, but submit is going to trigger the error. So if I enter Gmail now and I click on submit, you can see that it accepts that. So I can do unclebigbay@gmail.com, and then it's not going to also throw an error. But you must also try to validate the input, because you know this Unclebigbay is not actually a complete version. I mean unclebigbay@gmail.com, but when I click on submit, it's just submit, even though it is not actually correct. So we are going to be handling this using JavaScript in the future. So this is one of the reasons that we are going to be needing JavaScript to make things dynamic and ensure that things goes the way they are expected to be. So that's that on button versus submit and the email. So another type that we have is, I'll just copy this empty input, and then over here we just make use of the file. So the file type allows us to select file. So if I click on the choose file now, it's going to trigger the select dialog of the computer, and then I can select any file that I want. So if I select this file now, it's going to be displayed here. So that's basically the use case of a file type value. So to take an input of a file from a user, then you specify that we want it to be a file format. So the next one now, let me also copy this until tag. So the next one is hidden. So this hidden is quite different from every other tag. So the reason we have the hidden is actually kind of like above the scope of this video, but the use case is, in some cases you want some inputs to be hidden, and if they are hidden, they are not going to appear on the browser. As you can see here, you are not going to see them over here. So if I comment this out now, you can see there's no difference, and then if I bring it back, you can see like there's no difference on the browser. So depending on your use case, you might use the hidden attributes to hide it by default, and then you can use maybe like JavaScript to make it visible when a particular condition is being met. And you can also hide this to just maybe like pass an attribute to the form. So depending on your use cases in the future, but you will understand this better by the time you start having your own use cases and working with JavaScript as well, and then maybe CSS. So that's basically what I have to say about the hidden type value. So the next one we are going to be looking at now, let me bring this. Then we have the image. So this image value, now you can see that this looks familiar to when your image is broken. So we can also use this input tag to display an image on our browser. So we can just specify the source and then the path, so we can display our logo like this. And then we can also give an attribute. You already know that whenever you are displaying an image, you should always put an attribute value there in case the image is broken or when one of your visitor is using a screen reader. So for this alternative text, I'm just going to use website brand logo. So that's basically it. So when this attribute is broken, the source attribute is broken, you can see website brand logo. So it makes it easier, like, oh, an image is broken here, but this is what is supposed to be. So if there's no attribute, you can see we just have the type of submit. So this is how we want it to be. Provide a source and then provide an attribute to it as well. So that's basically that. So let's look at the next one that we have. So the next one we have is the month value. So it allows you to select a month from a particular year. So we have for 2023, and then you can select the month. So this only is work for year and month. You select the year and then the month. So depending on your use case, maybe you want to go for the one that allows you to provide the date, the month, and the year, or the one that allows you to provide the date, the month, the year, and also the time, or the one that only allows you to provide the year and the month. So just depends on what you want to work with, what your requirement is. That's basically it. So let's take a look at the next one. So for the next one, I'm just going to press Ctrl space bar, and then we have the number. So this number value is only going to be accepting a number. So I'm trying to type in alphabets here, and then you can see that it's not working, but E is working for some reason, but any other key is not going to be working. And then we have the number here. We have the number here, and then you can also use this to increase the number, to decrease it. So this is useful for maybe when you want the user to select a quantity on your browser, or you want them to enter their age. So you can basically just use a type of number, so it's not going to accept any value that is not a number. So that's basically the use case for this. So let's take a look at the next one. Bring in an empty tag here, and then we can take a look. We have the one for password. So for this password, it is just going to hide anything we are typing. So this should look familiar, because whenever you want to enter your password on any website, or you want to create a new password, is going to be showing an asterisk. So this is masked. Nobody can see this. So by combining this with JavaScript, we can actually have a logic to display this by combining the type to text, and also maintaining the value that we have there. So as time goes on, you'll be able to know how to do this with JavaScript when you get to JavaScript. So the next value we are going to be looking at for the input, let's take a look. We have the radio. We've already done for the radio. We have for the range. So if I click for the range now, so this range now, let me close this. So this range now can be used to select the range. Maybe you want a range from 100 to 200. You can use this to even maybe increase the brightness, or a value of anything. So depending on your own use case, if you want the user to even select their age using this slider, so you can use this as well. So that's basically it. So we also have a couple of other values, but I think the ones that we've already covered are the most important. We have the reset. This reset is basically used to reset the forms that you've already filled. We have the one for search, so that you want the tag to have the attribute of a search. We have the one for telephones, we have the one for time, URLs, and week, just like the one that we have for month. So you can play around with all of these values and attributes, and then you can see which one is more suitable for your own use case. So but don't worry about understanding all of these tags at the moment. I know they might be too much, because input as is just like a multi-purpose tag. It has a lot of use cases, so you can just stick with the most common ones that you are seeing on the website. For instance, now you always come across an input tag where you can input data. So you already know how to do that in your HTML code. And then if you see something like this, so you can go back to your VS Code and then type in the input tag. Then you can do type, and then you can now look at all the available values there. So you don't really have to cram them. If you're finding it difficult to cram them or to understand them, you can go back to the video again anytime to look at how I have used them and the explanation that I have given, and then you can also try them out on your own to make you have a hands-on experience with them. So that's basically it with the input. So now that we've learned about a couple of attributes that we have in HTML, there are more attributes in HTML. You don't really have to be worried about like knowing all the attributes, but you will get to know that there is a way in which you can pass a property to an HTML tag using their attributes. So we have an attribute of type, we have the one for border, we have the one for height, for weight, source, auth, and ID. So the next thing I'm going to be showing you now is how to combine some attributes together to create a functionality. So let's say, for instance, now we want to give this text a label, so that we want to tell the user that they should enter their username, so this is going to let them know that this is for username. So I can add a break tag here to be on another line. I can give this more space. We are going to be doing all this design with, using CSS later on, but I just wanted to have space. So at the top as well, let me just give you space. So yeah, so this is what we are dealing with. So we are dealing with this. So now we want it such that whenever we click on enter username, we want it to focus on this. We want it to focus. So what I mean by focus is like all these elements, all the elements in HTML have their own state. So the state that they have is like they have the focus state, they have the over state as well, they have some other states like focus within as well. So but the most important one is the focus and the over state. The over state is when you are moving your mouse over an element, while focusing means like when they are actually being focused. You've clicked on it and then they are expecting you to perform some actions on them. So now if we click on this label, we want it to focus on this because they have a relationship, because this label is for this input tag. So that's basically why whenever we click on this, we want it to focus on this. So to achieve this, we are going to give this input box an ID. Remember, I said an ID is a way to uniquely identify a particular tag from every other tag, because we have many input tags. So we want to give it an ID, and then this ID can be named as username. So this username now is a way for us to identify this particular input tag. And now, how do we now inform this label that it is for a particular input box? So this label has an attribute known as for. So this for means like label for. So this label is for which tag. So and now we can now say this label is for this username. So it is for a tag that has an ID of username. So now if I click on enter username, you can see now that this is being focused. So if I remove this now and then I click on enter username, you can see that nothing is actually happening. Nothing is happening. But if I bring back the username here to match with the ID that we have here, if I click here, you can see now that this is taking focus. So if I remove the ID here and then I click on this, you can see that nothing is actually happening. So this means like we are combining the ID and the four attributes together to create a connection between a label and an input tag. Also, you should note that the for and ID doesn't work with any other tag. It only works with the label and input tag. So always use it for label and input tag. So label should go with an input to label an input box that this is what the user should enter in this input box. So that is the combination and relationship between a label and an input tag. So another attribute I quickly want to chip in here is the title attribute. The title attribute is very useful to provide more information about an HTML element when we hover on it. One of the use cases, let's say for instance now, we said this is enter username, and then we want to display an information when a user hovers on the enter username label, because we want the user to know that clicking on this is going to focus on this. So we can pass in a title here. So the title attribute looks like this, and then we can say click to focus on the input feed for username. So basically we are telling the user that if you click on this, you are going to focus on the input feed for username, which is this. So now if I hover on this now, you can see that we have a little box. Let me zoom this in. So if I hover on this now, you can see that we have a little box popping up that says click to focus on the input feed for username. So if I click this now, this is going to focus. So the title is being used to provide more information about an HTML element. So we can also use this for any other HTML element. So let's say for instance, we can pass it to this heading one. So if you come here, we can do title and say this is an heading. So if I click save and come here and over on this, you can see we have this is an heading. This is an heading. So you can use it for a link. You can use it for an image. Let's say title this is an image. So this is just to provide more context on a particular tag. So you can see this is an image. So that's one of the use case, and it is very, very useful. So yeah, so that's basically it. So the next one that we are going to be talking about is combining the ID with the href attribute. So combining the ID attribute of a particular tag with the href attribute of a link tag can help us to implement the Goto section functionality that we want to achieve. So at this point now, we are going to go and implement this in our barbershop project. So what I'm going to do now is to open up the barbershop project, and then I can open it on the browser by right clicking here, and then you can right click anywhere within the source code of the barbershop, then right click on open with live server. I want to believe that you already have that installed already. So this is our project. I'm just going to make it more smaller, and then I will come here and adjust this like this. Now the next thing we want to do is to implement the go-to section navigation links that we can use to jump from one section to another. So what I want to do here is to come here and create a new section at the top here, and I'm going to be using the nav tag. So the nav tag is a semantic tag. So this semantic tag means tags that have meanings. So we have tags that doesn't have meaning, and we have tags that have meaning. We've already discussed this in the last video. So semantic tags are tags that have meanings. Like, so a section tag has meaning, but a div tag doesn't have meaning when you are looking at it for the first time. Section has meaning. Div, what is div? Division, it doesn't really have meaning. So we have that type of tags: semantics and non-semantics, meaningful tags and meaningless tags. Just keep it that simple. So the nav tag can be used to wrap around links. So if you have a bunch of links that are going to be used to navigate to another page, another website, or to another section, you can wrap it in a nav tag. But this doesn't mean that if you wrap it with a section or div tag, it's not going to work. They are going to work, but you want to structure your HTML code in a way that developers and the browser and search engine are going to properly understand, so they will know that, oh, this is a navigation section, this is another section, this is a section, this is a section, this is an aside, this is an article. So we have different kind of tags which you don't really have to be worried about if you don't know all of them now. Just keep it in mind that we have tags for a particular purpose and to make our code look neat, and also for engines and browsers to understand and render things properly. So the first thing we are going to do now is to create a link for the home section. So the home section is basically like if you want to go back to the index page. So what we are going to do now is to have an a tag, and then we have an href, and then we can close this and call this home. So this home now is home starts with slash. So this slash now is what leads to any other pages here. So we are just going to leave it like this. So this slash means like the index. And what is index? Index is our index.html. So if you have multiple pages, and then let's say on background now, so if I move this to background, let's say I move this to over here. So if I go back to the playground, so I have the home here. So let me move this link up. Let me move these two links up so that it will be easier for us to see. So now we have them here. So if I click on home, it's going to take me to the barber shop over here. And then if I make this as, let's make a copy and then do playground. So if I have playground here instead of home, so I can click on playground, I can click on home, I can click on playground. So what I'm doing here is like slash means the index. So the index is the first thing that you are going to see. So this is the index that we have here, the index of the page. When we visit this port without slash index, this is what we are seeing. So that's basically the index, and this playground now is the part of the file .html, different from png. You can see like they have the same format. So now we can just link this page to another one, go back to playground, and go back home, go back to playground, go back home. So that's basically what we are trying to achieve. So I can leave this here so that it will be easier for, okay, I will, so I'm just going to remove this since it doesn't have any relationship with what we have here. So the playground is just for us to play with different tags, learning tags, and then we can add the one that that suit our use case into the barber shop. So we don't just add tag because they exist, we add them because we need them. So the next thing we want to do now is to have a link for the hairstyles section. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create an ID, and then I'm going to have it as hairstyles, and save. So this ID now, we've already given this section a unique identifier as hairstyle, and then I can come here and do a tag, and then the href is going to be hash with the hairstyles, and then I'm going to name this as hairstyles. So the reason we are putting the hash here is we are telling the anchor tag that this is not a link to a page, but a link to a section in this particular web page. So we are not linking to another page, we are not linking to another website, but this is a link to jump to a particular section, and that is why we are using hash. So anywhere you are using id, even in css, by the time we get to css, we are going to be making use of the hash to make reference to an id in html. So by the time we get to css, you will understand better why we use hash for an id. So hash is used to identify an id or make reference to an id in html. So now that we have this hairstyle over here, now you can see we have the hairstyle. So if I click on hairstyles now, you can see that this jumps to the hairstyle section, and if I click again, it jumps to the hairstyle section. If I click once again, it jumps to the hairstyle section. So that's basically the first step. So the next one is for us to do the same thing for pricing. So I have an id for pricing. We have pricing here. So over here now, I'm going to have an a tag, href, and then I'm going to have an hash, and then pricing, and then I can have this as pricing. So if I come here now and click pricing, you can see now that I jump to pricing. So the browser takes me to pricing. If I click on hairstyles, it takes me to hairstyles. If I click on pricing, it takes me to pricing. So we will do the same thing for the media section as well. So I'm going to have an id, and then I'm going to have the media here, and up here I'm going to create an anchor tag. href is going to be hash media, and then we are going to have the media label here. And if I scroll to the top, I have the media here. So you can see like the color is kind of like different. So this is blue, this is kind of like different from blue. So this blue means like I've not clicked this link before, while the other color is telling me that I have clicked this link before. So if I click on media now, and then it takes me to media, so this is our media section. So now you can see like the color has changed again. So the browser has a way to let you know that you've actually clicked this link before, and it will let you know links that you've not clicked previously. So we are going to be discussing about this when we get to like the states of elements. You know, I mentioned it earlier. We have the focus states, we have the over states. For links, we have the visited. If you've visited the link before, that's the state. If you've not visited it before, that's default. And then we have active as well. So we are going to be discussing this in the coming videos. So we've done for hairstyles, we've done for pricing, we've done for media, and then we have for about and contact us. So you can go ahead and implement the go to section for the about section and the contact section as well. So that's going to be one of your assignments, and then try as much as possible to play around the tags and the attributes that we've mentioned here to get yourself familiar with them. Take your time to get used to them, so by the time we are making use of id and class, when we get to css, we are talking about width and height, we are talking about title, we are talking about borders, we are talking about the different types of input. You will have an idea, you'll be able to recall like, oh, I've had this before. Even if you don't understand it, that's fine, but just ensure like, oh, I think I've seen this before, and then when I'm talking about it, it will be easier for you to actually recall. So I'll just be reminding you about those attributes. So guys, that's it for today, and I hope that you've learned one or two things from watching this video. I'm going to be adding the assignment link in the video description, and I'm going to be releasing the evaluation sheet for this month in the first week of February, where I'm going to be evaluating your previous assignment and your barbershop project. I'm wishing you good luck with that. See you in the next video. Bye bye.